It is the morning of March 24th, 2025, and I am still out here in Texas. Today, in sunny San Antonio, to see one of the most beautiful people and poets to ever live on this earth, Naomi Shihab Nye. To say it is an honor to be visiting with Naomi today is an understatement. I could damn near hyperventilate with excitement of how delighted I am and grateful to be with Naomi today. Naomi is one of those people who makes the world more beautiful and lovely simply by being who they are and by writing their poetry from the heart. People like Naomi help us more deeply appreciate and notice the beauty and loveliness all around us, both in our connection with each other and the earth. I am who I am because Naomi is who she is. And I don't want to say it's just about noticing, paying attention to the beauty and the loveliness. It is also that Naomi helps us understand our moral responsibility to notice what is ugly, what is unjust, and for us to act on that responsibility and make it better, to be stewards of the land and to protect it, to be good neighbors and friends to each other, and to love each other. Those are the things that are going to help us most right now. I just think that if I am able to share Naomi's words and her spirit, that the world will undoubtedly feel more warm and loving and welcoming. And just like her father, people will start feeling that all of us can be friends, even when we grew up in different places, if we have different religious beliefs, even with people who say they don't like poetry, which is preposterous. We can all be friends. But it's the curiosity and genuine interest in listening and paying attention to people in the world that drew me to Naomi. And when I asked Elizabeth Crook months and months ago, when I was going to plan a trip to Texas for Books on the Bed, I said, hey, who are some authors near Austin that you think would love to do this? And she gave me an incredible list, huge list of writers. And I was like, dang, Texas has so many great writers. This is crazy. But one of them was Naomi. And I immediately was like, yeah, let's ask her because that would be amazing. And I was so thrilled when she agreed to do it. And even when we first talked, even before we first spoke, I just had a feeling that we would really connect and that we would be friends. I'm so excited that we actually get to meet each other in real life today. And that's why this is important. I want people to know that I am truly here to be with you, not to make content or say that I met this incredible poet. It's to know you as deeply as I can, to appreciate the time that I have with you today. Naomi has this philosophy that you take poetry everywhere it's invited. She's traveled all throughout the state of Texas, the United States, across the world, sharing poetry in the places that it is invited. And I think that's how I look at Books on the Bed. I will go anywhere that this conversation, where connecting over books, is invited. I think about how many people around the world have had their lives changed or made more full by Naomi's words. And the fact that I get to be in the presence of this person is really special. So in honor of Naomi, before I head to her place, I am going to simply walk around and listen and pick up trash and make room for whatever is going to happen today. It's like these words from another poet friend, Amy Leanne Richardson. We don't get to know what happens next. It's hard to face on days dotted with disaster. Poetry is catching my breath, making sure I pause when moments feel too big, making sure I see those small things gluing us together. You're listening to Books on the Bed, where I travel through the country asking our hosts, if I came to your town and stayed at your house, what books would you put on my bed? Each host will share 6 books for me to carry with me on the journey of my life. And I'm here to share those books with you. As we go, we're building a digital library with every book put on every bed across the country. And who knows, maybe someday, the world. we are trying to share as many diverse stories as possible to part a curtain between us and bring us closer to each other. We hope these books and conversations make a meaningful difference in your life. Thank you for listening and being with us on this journey. When I was telling people that I was coming down here months ago, I'm not sure you know how much people love you around this country.
Oh, that's so sweet.
I was in rural Virginia interviewing Henry Wise, who's a mystery thriller novelist. And we were for this interview, Books on the Bed, we were at his family's 1830s farmhouse outside of Lexington, Virginia. And I had given him a copy of Honeybee for his kids as a gift for the podcast.
Wow, that's so sweet.
And he was like, oh, cool. And then I told him I was coming to see you. And he's like, what? That's amazing. And then his cousin who lives in that house and her husband caught wind of me coming down here to visit you. And they also were like, are you kidding me? She's one of my favorites.
That's so touching.
But I also wanted to show you this. I was on Substack. Have you been on Substack before?
No, they keep writing to me, though, and telling me I have followers there. And I don't know how I could because I'm not there.
So I was on Substack a couple of weeks ago, and I had to copy this down because I was like, wow, this is another example of you influencing people's lives.
Oh, yeah. Oh, right. All right. Well, I have found that poem in two women's homes pasted on their refrigerator, magnetized to their refrigerators. And one woman said, this gave me the energy I needed to do my divorce. I was hovering for years, but when I found this poem, I hung it up and I said, okay, that's it. I said,
isn't that beautiful?
Yeah, it's
Doesn't
exciting.
that make, even one thing like
thrilling.
that. And I want to tell people, the thing I'm referencing on Substack is, ever had a poem make you want to quit your job? Because this one did it for me. And it's one of your poems. If the shoe doesn't fit, you take it off. Of course you take it off. It doesn't worry you. It isn't your shoe. And what we were just talking about with me in Minnesota and the jobs, it's like same thing. I think you give people this freedom to live their life in a way that feels more like themselves and make hard choices that feel like, why would you do this, you know? But hey, it doesn't worry you. It's not your shoe. So I just found that so funny that right before I came here.
That's so touching. And I just realized that's really, really deeply touching to me, Matt. And thanks for showing me that.
Oh, cool. So anyway, the reason I share that and just a couple of examples of people who love your work, you've meant a lot to so many people.
Thank you.
And your books have been a gift. So I'm going to start with giving you gifts.
Oh my gosh, how exciting.
So we can open them and we'll start with this one because I want to preface, wandering poet, teaching poet, going across the country, the world, sharing the beauty and power of poetry. This, I don't know if you've read her books before, but if there was a kindred spirit in poetry that is on the other side of the country,
I'm very excited.
It is her.
Oh, maybe it's a totally new friend. Oh, I do not have this book, and it's the most gorgeous cover I've ever seen.
So I mean, the parallels between you and Glennis are unreal.
This is gorgeous. Literally, The Listening Skin
by Glennis
Redmond.
So she was born and raised in South Carolina, and she spent 3+ decades traveling the country, going to schools and other organizations and performing poetry. I mean, good Lord, she is one of the most beautiful souls on earth.
This book looks really appealing, and I can't wait to read it.
And it just feels like it's very aligned with how you write about listening, but it comes from a different perspective because she's been ill for quite some time, and she just keeps persevering. And so it's about listening to that space between the skin and the marrow and the air, you know, and listening to your body and celebrating existence. She also was on Books on the Bed, and she picked a Lucille Clifton book, right?
This is incredible.
So it's all these connections that I want to make between authors, and I think you and Glennis Redmond.
That is beautiful. Thank you, Glennis.
You would be
my
friends.
New friend.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Matt.
I really hope you get to meet her someday.
I will definitely hope so too.
Yeah, she's so cool.
You.
And
I even love the paper you wrapped in. That's so beautiful.
And here's the second one, which is very different.
Gosh, it's so generous of you.
And I
love this paper too.
Yeah, it's great. We just got that at the bookstore.
Well, I like your design selections. So thank you. This is so sweet.
So I don't always want to give poets poetry books. I want.
Yeah,
I
no,
want,
no.
I
We
want to
read a lot of other things.
I want to give a book that
Quite wide open here.
I feel like this person embodies similar qualities to you and your father.
Oh, thanks.
And people who are all about breaking down cultural barriers and exploring the unknown and sharing beauty.
Oh, wow. I don't know this book either. This is so exciting.
So,
A Life Reimagined.
George Massa,
George Massa.
he was a photographer who was very instrumental in the creation of the Great Smoky Mountain National Park.
How fantastic.
Most people know about the white people, such as Horace Kephart, who was a good friend of his. And George Massa didn't get his just due until the last 20 years, but this one even takes his biography further because we learn more information about him being a baseball player in Japan. And then
He was Japanese?
Yeah. And so he moved from Japan. He ended up in Asheville, North Carolina in the 19 teens. And his life is absurd. I mean, the lengths this man went to share the beauty of our mountains and what he did in terms of breaking down cultural barriers.
I love this picture right away. And my husband, Michael Nye, uses the 8x10 large format camera himself. So
he'll love this.
He will love this book. And I wonder if he knows about George. And we will both read this book. And I love reading biographies. Biographies and autobiographies are really at the top of my list with poetry.
And I think like you'll
I'm thrilled.
The way that you say, hey, let's share poetry. Let's share words. He wanted that with these photographs.
This is fantastic.
And imagine a Japanese immigrant at the time where there was a lot of anti-Japanese sentiment in the country.
Right. Yeah.
And he's out near where I live. I mean, when you know where I live, you're like, it is insane that a Japanese person was going out with all this equipment.
Yeah.
Deep into the mountains to places that people were probably like, who is this guy? But he was breaking down barriers.
This is thrilling.
Yeah,
Matt.
I just think that
I have more connections with both of these books than you could even imagine because I was just part of a Ways of Listening event in Dallas with Paul Holdengraber, the great interviewer. And I want to show him this book. I'll take a picture of it for him. And Paul is also doing an initiative on Japan with the Japanese-American Cultural Center in Los Angeles. So we're talking a lot about my favorite Japanese poet, Shuntaro Tanikawa, who died and this past November. And I will make sure Paul also knows about this book because
please share it far and wide.
These are both connecting to my moment as well as me personally.
Well, and the last gift that I'm waiting
Thank you so much.
to hear from a friend of mine, Cecilia Cornejo in Northfield, Minnesota. She's a professor of film at Carleton College. And she was my first interview on my first podcast like years ago. And I was introduced to her by being invited to a community film screening when I just stopped in this tiny town in Minnesota.
I love it.
The owner of an art gallery was like, hey, you should come over and check this out. And the documentary film was called Ways of Being Home. And it was about the immigration from Maltrata, Mexico to Northfield, Minnesota. Wow. And these immigrants who couldn't show their faces on camera, mind you, in this film because of the first Trump administration. But it was so beautiful because she's highlighting this displacement, right? But like it's voluntary, but then you go somewhere else where you have to hide. And it's just this idea of that, like, you're kind of torn between worlds. And I know you write a lot about being in between cultures and between worlds and trying to bridge those gaps. But Cecilia also has a project called The Wandering House, where she takes a retrofitted ice fishing house or shack and it's an audio studio. And she had brought it around for years to towns in rural southern Minnesota, and people got to go in and talk about their notions of home. What is home? Right?
Wow, this is fantastic.
And then she made an embroidery project out of those answers. So there are quilts made up of like what is home to these people in southern Minnesota. And you had talked about the Palestinian embroidery. Oh my God!
Tatriz. Yeah.
And so, so Cecilia's from Chile, and she moved to the U.S. decades ago. But her whole thing is just like you two are aligned. And so I'm trying to get a DVD copy of that film for you.
Oh,
so that I
thank you
can
so
send it
much.
to
I
you.
would love to watch
And
it.
at the very least, I can pay for the rental on Vimeo that they have.
Well, that film should be shown in this town too. I mean, 63% Latino town.
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
like you and Cecilia,
Well,
so
I would
many
love
threads.
to meet. Yeah, so many threads. You know, that's what we have to hang on to right now when people feel the terrible trauma of so much disconnection that, well, at the same time, there are all these quiet, beautiful, textural, thoughtful threads binding all of us together at the same time. It's not as if that's all we have.
Yeah, I actually wrote.
Thank you, Matt. That's so thoughtful of you. Every single one of these things. I really appreciate it.
I wrote down your words. Be brave. Little things still matter most. And
Well,
it feels like that right now because a lot of things feel too big to take on.
the grief and the pain, too big to take on, and yet it has us. I mean, we can't get away from it. We can't say, okay, I'm not going to feel any more grief and pain. I'm just going to have a cheerful life now, because it's so present wherever we go, and people responding to things with such, heartfelt pain and
Yeah.
need for a listener and need for resolution. Yeah.
Well, and so before we get to your books on the bed, there's a few things that I want to talk about because, again, I just feel like you've helped me, along with many writers, shape my life in a way that feels honest and true and is not about the grand gesture. This project, it's about being together. It's about taking your time. It's about meeting each other in real life and sitting down. And I've been to so many places with so many diverse kinds of writers and artists of all kinds. And it feels like that is at least one way to help feel at home in a world that's like just chaotic. But there was one thing that stuck out in your introduction with, is it Voices in the Air? And you wrote about Freya Stark. Mm-hmm. And this thing, this just feels so apt for the moment. But you said her respect for people unlike herself, her fascination with worlds very different from the European ones she had grown up in, yet fully recognizable in their humanity and hope, heartens me when my own time feels too odd to bear. And it feels like this is one of those times where...
And it's only gotten odder and sadder. Yes.
So I'm curious as whether it's with poetry or anything else that you're doing. What is helping you cope, or what heartens you in this time that feels too odd to bear?
Right. Well, thank you, Matt. Well, people like you hearten me a lot, and children have always heartened me. That's why I chose to work with them for so long. And just being in company with a child just for 5 minutes, you feel as if you've been cleansed, refreshed, like language takes on a palpable reality again. It's so much fun and so heartening. The other day I had the spirit of walking a neighbor's dog with two little boys, my grandson and his brother, and just hearing their conversation as we walked and hearing how my grandson would report to his brother something he knew about the neighborhood that I'd told him on a previous walk. That, just hearing language among kids is so uplifting. So I would say being with kids first, and reading. And reading has always been my refuge since early childhood, knowing that I could have the option as an elementary student of going to the library or going to recess. I often chose the library.
Not surprised.
And the librarians became my really close friends. And it was librarians who first told me that if you were a writer, you could send your work to children's magazines. So they helped me start sending my work out when I was 7. And
that's so young. I would have never thought to do that.
Well,
but shout
I
out
wouldn't have
librarians.
thought, and I don't think my parents would have told me to. I don't think they would have had that idea, even though my father was already a journalist. But, I started sending to children's magazines at that age, thanks to librarians. And it just felt like we're all writers, we're readers. And if you are a reader-writer, you have this opportunity to have more friends. You could, my dream at that time was someone you've never met would read something you wrote. And that was thrilling to me.
There was a story and I think I have the book with me because I want to get it signed, but your essay book, where you had written a poem or a story in elementary school.
Yeah.
and you wanted to give it to your teacher who you said didn't like you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But then there was this kid
who said, I know what you mean. Yeah.
That was one of my favorite essays.
That was like the redemption of anything in the world. So I could then stand my teacher not liking me because someone else knew what I meant. And I have since I wrote that, I have been reunited with one of my best friends from first and second grade.
Oh my
and we were
gosh.
disconnected all these years. We had no idea where the other person was.
Since elementary school.
Yeah, no, we'd never talked because I think in third grade, what happened? Did she move to another school? Something happened where after second grade, we just didn't see each other. So thanks to Facebook or some method, she found me a few years ago, and we've had a beautiful conversation and met up once already. Since then, and she confirms that our first grade teacher was one of the meaner first grade teachers on earth, who said really mean things to us personally and to our parents about us, things that would never be allowed in the world today, I don't think. But right then, writing was my refuge and reading was my refuge because I could go into a book and feel someone's different story, feel different characters, and realize my world was not the only world. And from early on, that was a goal, just to have a bigger life, to have more worlds, to be connected to more worlds, to meet people. Like that quote about Stark, you know, she was interested in going out and meeting people in these other worlds. And
I also wrote down literature gives us a home in a bigger time.
Yes, it does. And a bigger home.
Yeah. And I love that even like with I always struggle with people who think that dwelling on the meanness of another person is helpful or constructive. Now, granted, it's easy to do. It's bad when people are mean, you know? Like, I just think I was diagnosed with Tourette syndrome when I was 10, and grade school, high school is really hard. I mean, it still is when people judge you in public. I mean, that child part of you feels the judgment and the stare and like the almost disgust that people have with you because of something that you can't control. And so I always remember, though, I feel like because of that pain, not that I write to make friends, but I read and I reach out. And I've always wanted that world where people with different disabilities and across cultures and from different towns, like we can all sit together. But making friends is the best way to counteract that meanness because the more people know each other, the less you can be mean.
That's
you
right.
know? And so I just found it so beautiful that moment, I mean, like literally it made me tear up when I first read that because how powerful that you got what you wanted right there.
Yeah.
How many people don't ever feel like people know what they mean?
Yeah. And to have someone whose name I didn't know say that was the thrilling, okay, this can really happen. And that's never gone away. When you give a reading of work or when a high school student writes to you and says, you know, I went through a hard time. This poem of yours helped me get through that time. It really matters. You are a person who makes all these connections. And luckily, if we're readers and writers, we find out that text makes those connections too. And that's just a gift that you never get tired of, that you can't stop respecting and appreciating.
What I've really loved and admired about your life and the ways in which you've brought poetry to the world and used it for connection, a lot of people assume, even have met plenty of poets who are quiet, isolated even, right? But I mean, think about it, even with Dickinson, right? The story that was written about Emily Dickinson was a recluse that didn't have any personality, you know, like wasn't part of the community, which is not true, you know?
No, not true.
And so we've, I suppose, crafted this image or been told that poets are isolated, solitary people who like just write for themselves. And, you know, I guess if it gets to somebody, great. But you went a very different direction. And this is why I got you Glennis, because both of you said, you know what? What was the quote that you said about my initiative has always been take poetry anywhere that it's invited, never say no. So why did you make that decision instead of just writing your books and maybe doing some readings or whatever and selling your books to do what you did with teaching and sharing poetry literally around the globe? Why make that call instead of go the other way?
Well, I did need a job. But I also had discovered while I was in college that I really loved talking about writing as well as doing it myself. And I had a chance when I was in university to work at this summer camp for high school age writers. So I was only a few years older than these people, but I got to present to them and encourage them and dream up generative workshop activities for them. And I loved it. It just felt so comfortable and natural to be thinking, well, what made me want to write such and such a piece? Yeah. Okay, how could I translate this into an activity that would make all of this group of kids want to write? And so finding other people's poems, curating my little folders of poems, collections, these are the poems we'll use when we do that writing activity. I just had such pleasure in that. And it was something I had not thought about. I hadn't thought about being a teacher. I hadn't thought about working in schools for my whole life, but I just got sparked by that and then heard about arts commissions around the country at the time I got out of college were hiring artists in different genres to go into schools. So the writers in the schools, artists, dancers in the schools, artists in the schools programs were really in their heyday then. And it still exists in various ways in many communities where the school itself takes on hiring their artists in residence. But in those days, there were some states that were very, very keen on this program. Texas, happily, was one. Yeah. So they had this going, and I suggested I could work in small towns. And when I started out, I realized I was going to go to a lot of towns. I'd only lived in Texas, a few years before going to college. So I realized this would be a horizon of meeting your state through people and their voices in smaller towns. And I just absolutely loved it.
It gives me chills to think about that because so many folks don't know their neighbors, let alone their state. And now granted, I'm not saying I am on the extreme end of travel. I have 130,000 miles almost on a 3-year-old car. I mean, I love it. And mine's national. Like I have to do it. It's just, it's the way that I want to live. But your work in the schools and generally just traveling and talking with people reminded me of Terry Tempest Williams' The Weather Report program in Wyoming, where her and these other writers in the graduate program at the University of Wyoming went around asking folks, what's the weather like in your town? And it was like these writing workshops and sort of like a town hall of figuring out like what's going on in the state, like the anxieties, the fears of people. And it was breaking down so many walls of being able to talk about things that are difficult to talk about, especially when you think about oil and fracking and agriculture. It's like these things that you feel like you have to tiptoe around with a lot of folks. And so it invited people into this space. And at one point, I mean, I've referenced this moment so many times because it's similar to Cecilia's work in rural Minnesota, where a Chilean immigrant can have a productive dialogue with a white person who is trained to hate them, but the senator comes in, and I can't remember his name in Wyoming at the time, and he is guns a-blazing. Right? Like just denigrating all of the people in the room for hippie stuff, But after that, like he kind of just threw his tirade and realized that they weren't meeting him with any friction. And he finally, you could just feel like relaxed and told his story that like he grew up in an oil field and he was called trash. And so like a lot of what he was doing was just speaking that childhood experience that has just kept coming. And so like what she said is that he realized like he could just share the story of his life and we would listen. And so that was like a seminal moment reading that for me. I'm like, wow, we got to have more of those programs.
That's beautiful.
Whether it's for kids or high schoolers or anybody.
Well, I love Terry and I love all her projects and her writings. And you remind me of a poet I know in California who's named Janine Lentine, who once set up like a little card table outside a tea shop with 2 stools at it. And then she just put on it the listening booth. And she told people they could talk for 5 minutes and she wouldn't say anything, but they could say anything. And she couldn't believe it when people started lining up to do this. But it makes sense to me because I think everybody does have some sort of hunger to speak, to give voice to something, and that thing changes every day, what you need to talk about, what you'd like to talk about. And we don't always have a listener. But, it struck me just the other night when I was part of this Ways of Listening project that we always feel these days sort of compelled to give an opinion or have a comeback when we listen. Like if that person says what I agree with, then we want to say something that underscores, like applaud them. Or if they say something that we totally disagree with, where's our comeback? But it just hit me, maybe the thing we need more is just the open listening, where I don't have to share an opinion. I could just listen and
or God forbid, ask another question.
Yeah, ask a question.
Like probe a little bit.
Ask another question. Yeah.
But it's true. I think when you come from, and I'm 33, millennials have been inculcated in the comeback culture. You're going to say something, I have to tell you how I feel about it.
Right.
And it really has destroyed our ability to connect with people. And I also feel like that's why we read less. Yeah. Because reading, there is no opinion formed, right? There's nobody to shout at. And so, and this is, I'm not saying this is it's a theory of mine, but we're a fast-paced life. It's all about tweeting.
Right.
And even now Substack with notes, everything has to be in immediacy. There's an immediacy to everything in response, and books invite you to slow down and not have a response. And I just feel like the way we're trained to live is not conducive to reading. And so we don't learn the value of being with someone who is not there, but is there. But the point is, you can't read a book and then refuse, even if you're mad at what they say.
You're still going to hold it for a while and think about it.
But that's the thing is, let's it just reflect.
Right.
I think we've lost the ability to experience the world, to experience a conversation. It just feels like a fight, or a congratulations. And to me, there's nothing worse than that. Just like let's all go in a circle and tell each other how great we are because of our ideals, But I don't know. I digress on that. But I love what you're talking about, that people just need to listen. And I feel like with poetry, I don't know, maybe people write it because they want to feel heard. And like you said, you want someone to say, I know what you mean.
Right. And this takes me to my first book on the bed.
Let's do it. Yeah, I love when this happens.
So when I was 18 years old in university, I first started reading W.S. Merwin, William Merwin. Of course, I had no fantasy at the time that I would ever know him, become close friends with him. None of that. Nothing like that came into my mind. I began reading him, and I first read him in an anthology called Naked Poetry. Of course, kids were attracted to such a title. And I wrote in the margin of the book, "This is a voice that could save us." And went on to read him till now, all these years later. And this is his last book, Garden Time by W.S. Merwin. We just passed the anniversary of his death. He died on the Ides of March a few years ago.
Wow.
And I'd love to read you from Garden Time just two short poems that connect exactly to what you're saying.
Please.
And William was a propagator of palm trees, rare palm trees, endangered palm trees, and he created a beautiful forest, 14-acre forest of palm trees on the island of Maui in what had been, as they call it in Hawaii, ruined pineapple fields. So they were just scrubby fields that were pineapple farming was no longer going on. But William bought them and turned them into this incredibly beautiful, nourishing palm forest. And his initiative continues to live through the Merwin Conservancy, and I urge people to check that out online. But here are two poems from Garden Time
I can't wait.
that to me are about reading. Rain at Daybreak by W.S. Merwin. One at a time, the drops find their own leaves. Then others follow as the story spreads. They arrive unseen among the waking doves who answer from the sleep of the valley. There is no other voice or other time. I think I love that poem because it reminds me of being in a book when I was a child and being so absorbed in the book, there is no other voice or other time.
Yeah.
And I love the idea the story is spreading, the voices are coming. This one is also related. This is called Voices Over Water. There are spirits that come back to us when we have grown into another age. We recognize them just as they leave us. We remember them when we cannot hear them. Some of them come from the bodies of birds. Some arrive unnoticed, like forgetting. They do not recall earlier lives. And there are distant voices still hoping to find us.
Gosh, it's so good.
When you love books, you know there are so many distant voices still hoping to find us. And I think that's heartening, Matt. There are so many times in the world we feel lonely or disassociated with whatever's going on right around us. But that idea that we could find a friend in pages, in a voice that we're carrying with us. I would like to urge people to read William Merwin's books, but also to watch him reading his own poems during the different eras of his life, because he was such a great reader and he was such a wise man and had such a resonant voice.
And I love those poems. And what it reminds me of, specifically There Is No Other Voice or Time, my friend Eliza Edens wrote an album in 2020 called Time Away from Time. And it was when she was hiking one of the big trails in Colorado alone. And she came back, she did a residency in this tiny room in Philadelphia, and she wrote what I consider one of the best albums ever written. And I don't care how many people don't know it.
Well, we have to write the name of this down too.
Trust me,
okay,
we will.
Want that.
And I will always encourage people, just use this as an aside, don't just let Spotify tell you what to listen to. Because you want to talk about a voice that reached me. Eliza completely changed the scope of my life. I mean, the journey that I went on after I listened to that album was, I felt like this kinship. And then years later, she came into the house show at my house in North Carolina.
Wow, that's so great.
And so but that time away from time is what happens when, it is not uncommon for me to go to somebody's house and 6 hours later and it's dark. And you're like, wow, I didn't even know that time went by. Because you just get rid of the phones. It's just two people in a room, and that's all that matters, and the books. And so, I think poetry can take you in that time away from time where you don't feel like you're counting. You've talked about this a lot. There used to be nobody waiting for our attention.
Nobody waiting. And you didn't have this constant nagging urgency to go check your messages because if somebody needed to find you, they would find you. Yeah. But it wasn't like there was this stream of messages we had to tend to. And I'm not sure it's a good thing.
No,
I'm not sure it's a good thing.
I can 100%, my opinion.
Yeah, good. I like your opinion. Yeah.
But it's true. And it's just, but I feel like poets can help us slow down, take us away from those things, and not worry so much about what's waiting for us.
No.
Right? Let's step into this time, into this voice, and just pay attention. And to turn something ruined into something beautiful is a very important, philosophical perspective. Not to look at the ruin, but say, what can I do here? And so I love that. I didn't know that story about the trees. Yeah,
and William wrote his morning drafts of poems, hand wrote them on the backs of junk mail envelopes because he felt he wouldn't be precious then. It's not like you're writing on gorgeous stationery or in a fancy notebook. He just wrote on these things that other people would throw in the trash. And he was a big recycler, but also I think it gave him a feeling of just possibility. And
I love that.
Yeah. And he was very keen on ritual, the ritual of writing, doing it every morning. He used to tell people that he never spoke before noon. I knew him long enough when we all became friends that I saw him break that code multiple times.
Yeah.
Because I would often see him when he was on the road and he had to speak before noon. But when he was at home, he would try to maintain that quietude in the mornings and his own time with text. And he was a huge reader and translator as well. He really felt that being a translator was important to our world as well, bringing voices we wouldn't understand into our spheres.
Yeah, and I, as someone who has the last few years of my life watched a lot more movies in a different language. But also a friend I'm going to interview in Louisville in a few weeks translated these French texts that I was like, whoa, okay, yeah, I need to start looking more for that. Like I haven't interviewed someone who's translated so far, at least not that I knew. And so it's cool to think like, oh yeah, people are doing this all the time. Yeah. What an important job.
Yeah, beautiful.
How did you meet?
Oh, William?
Yeah.
How did we meet? Well, we attended a reading of his in Oregon. And this brings us to my next book.
Yeah.
And William Stafford, great poet, whom I feel is my lifetime mentor forever, along with William Merwin and Lucille Clifton and other people. William Stafford was present at William Merwin's reading, and we knew him. We had become friends with him a few years before that. And William Stafford invited us to go to a dinner for William Merwin afterwards. Oh. And we thought, oh my goodness, we're just, in the audience. We don't deserve to go to this dinner. And we had a 2-year-old with us.
Oh, goodness.
So he said, no, it'll be fine. Come on. So we went and we met William Merwin, and we were able to tell him that we had started renting a house in Mexico, in Chiapas, Mexico, where my husband would photograph like a month or 6 weeks of each year before our son was born. And then when he was born too, we were going down there with him. And we found out after we started renting the house that it had been William Merwin's house in the past. And we didn't know that. That was not the reason we went to find this house. We didn't know that. So this was intriguing to him. And he said, well, tell me how the house is doing. And we became friends really through the sharing of this space in Mexico. And then miraculously, like some months later, we were back down there staying in the same house, and he and his wife came and stayed with us in his
my God,
old
that is
house.
so cool. I love these stories.
It was the coolest. And so that was the week, I would say, we all totally bonded and became friends forever. Yeah, and I revered them. Yeah, it was very special.
So cool. Oh, I love when these stories have and books have connections.
And all these intricate little puzzle pieces. And then years later, I had the privilege of sitting on the board of the Merwin Conservancy while he was still alive, because it was founded while he was alive, and we wanted his input and his thoughts about it all and how he hoped it would go. So, to be going out to Maui more regularly because of the board meetings and seeing him and his wife.
Oh man. And now that bums me out too, because I've been to Maui twice, which is rare. I feel like it. I mean, I went with the Michigan basketball team when I worked for them. When I was a student, we played in the Maui Invitational at Chaminade. Wow. So we played in that little gym, and then we went back years later with my family, and I'm like, gosh, I wish I would have known.
Oh, I wish you would have met him.
Gosh.
Yeah. He was so special. Well, so William Stafford is someone I found in my high school English textbook. So before I read W.S. Merwin, I found William Stafford. And after reading 3 of his poems when I was 17, I thought, okay, this is my voice. I have loved so many voices before now, starting with Emily Dickinson, Robert Louis Stevenson, Carl Sandburg, E.B. White, all these people that we loved when we were kids. But I thought, William Stafford is my poet. I feel it. He's really my poet. So I went to the school library, and looking back, this was pretty great. I said, do you have any books? Full books by William Stafford. They had like 3 or 4.
Amazing.
In a high school, public school in Texas. So I checked them all out, took them with me, devoured them, flipped out, went to the public library, got more books, and would love his poems, himself and his entire family for the rest of his life until now. I mean, he still is a crucial writer to me. So everywhere I go, I carry one of his books, usually one of William Merwin's books. But this book, Every War Has Two Losers, William Stafford on Peace and War, was edited and introduced by his son, Kim Stafford, who is also a fabulous writer, critical to our souls. And this book is so important to me because it shares poems, but also it shares a lot of journal entries about peace and war. things that were never published anywhere else. So
Incredible.
to be able to go into this book and feel that I can be reunited with sanity. Like here's an entry. How far down the road are you looking? Where you turn off? Where a bridge waits? Into the fog? Here's one. Success may not mean you did right. You may win a war you are sorry to have started. You know, he was constantly writing about this topic. He was a conscientious objector himself. In that war, we persuaded ourselves that the people we were killing were really bad. How about that? That's a good one. I find that I need his poems and his quotes in all kinds of different ways. Like here's a whole section of the book, Some Questions About Victory. So if you love his poems, great. If you've never read them before, this could be a good place to begin. Here's just a beginning of something. Gandhi questions, citizen questions, trends of thought. So this is how that starts. Can a good person be a good citizen in a bad country? Is there such a thing? Can a good person be a good friend of a bad person? Can you speak truth to power? How long do you have to say no to an evil command? They give you a flag and watch to see how hard you wave it. There are just so many thoughtful lines. You cannot get away from thoughtful lines in this book.
Goodness.
So I want people to know about Every War Has Two Losers, Kim Stafford's incredible book. This came from Milkweed Editions.
I love Milkweed.
I love Milkweed.
So many good
and I love how it starts with an actual a draft of a poem, which William Stafford hand corrected in 1957. The famous poem At the Bomb Testing Site. I honestly feel, Matt, I couldn't have lived my life without William Stafford and William Merwin. Two Williams.
Yeah.
And of course, there have been other Williams I loved as well, like William Wordsworth, many other Williams, William Carlos Williams.
Yeah.
I recently wrote for the Taylor Swift anthology a poem about all the Williams.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's so good to honor those people, though. I love that you said that's my voice, right? For poetry, like you found it, because that's how it felt with Willa Cather for me.
It's a great feeling,
there was
right?
just, I hear her every day. She guides me every day. And maybe it's because I always say there's some sliver of rural Nebraska that I took with me when I left when I was a kid. And I never knew about Willa until I was in my 20s. But I just feel like, of course it was that. Of course it was the person from this place that felt like a blip in my life, but yet very important when I was a child. And she just woke me up to the possibilities of my own life. And so, but yeah, she's just that if I had to pick one writer, Welty's is close, but I got to say it's Cather. And so it's just so powerful and beautiful when you find that. And so cool that you got to know both of them too. That just, you didn't know.
No, that was like the extra luxury of my being a fan, a reader. I mean, never did I imagine that I would get to know and be friends with both of them.
And to be honest, that's how I feel with all of you. I'm like, I have to pinch myself that when I look back at all the wonderful people I've met, I'm like, how? You know, it's so great.
I'm sure everyone feels equally privileged to have you coming into their homes, really, because just the connection through books it's like a pure, beautiful connection.
It is.
It is.
Maybe
it's
the purest.
Nobody's trying to dominate or say my book is better than your books or my writers are better than your writers. No, these are people we love who have been with us so long.
And who do we love more than Lucille Clifton?
Well, Lucille Clifton. So I have to tell you, just a few weeks ago, I had the pleasure of being in Baltimore, where the Lucille Clifton and Fred Clifton house is being preserved and being curated. The family bought it back. Her daughter, Sydney Clifton, was able to buy the house back that they had lived in as children with their parents. And it's so exciting to me to have entered the house only a few weeks ago. And I have had many Lucille Clifton books over my time. I did get to know Lucille as well. Hear many, many of her readings. be present with her at different festivals. So I was privy to the power she was on earth, her bravery, her luminosity, her everything about her was filled with gusto. I could say that.
Yeah.
And going into the house, it's becoming a residence space for writers can go and have like a weekend getaway and stay in it. But also workshops are being conducted in the dining room and living room, and local writers are being invited to, create a class, gather a group and do things there. Super exciting. The house was much more noble and impressive than I had pictured it. I don't know why. I pictured it like a one-story, smaller house with a front porch. Now there is a beautiful front porch, but it's a big, tall, like 3-story house with beautiful land around it, kind of on the top of a hill. I hadn't pictured any of that. It was really special to walk around in there with the curator and just think about Lucille raising her kids, and then think about all the poems of hers I had loved that were written in that house. This was her third collection, An Ordinary Woman. And this was not a book I had. So very, very special to be given a book. Let me tell you the date on this book.
Oh, yeah.
So this is now, this date is 1974. And the dedication was to her husband, Fred, who was a sculptor. To Fred, you know me well. So Lucille's poems, to me, they wake us up to what's everywhere. So this is called My Boys for Chen and Baggy. My boys' beauty is numberless. No kit can find their colors in it. Only African artists studying forever can represent them. They are brothers to each other and to other live and lovely things. People approaching my boys in their beauty stand stunned, questioning over and over, what is the meaning of this? I just love how she was not afraid to end a poem with a question, write short-line poems, be clear, be simple, not clog her poems up with too many adjectives. Here's one called Roots. Call it our craziness even. Call it anything. It is the life thing in us that will not let us die. Even in death's hand, we fold the fingers up and call them greens and grow on them. We hum them and make music. Call it our wildness then. We are lost from the field of flowers. We become a field of flowers. Call it our craziness, our wildness. Call it our roots. It is the light in us. It is the light of us. It is the light. Call it whatever you have to. Call it anything.
Oh, God, such a good poem.
And, I feel as if her poems, they were homages to life. They were they're praise poems. They are identification poems. Find yourself in this spirit.
Yeah.
They're poems that wake us up to what's around us all the time. They're anthems. That's the word I was trying to remember. Yeah. They're anthem poems.
That's a good way to put it.
And later she would go on and write, poems like Ode to My Hips. I remember a lot of high schools, I think girls have written about this poem because they're just fascinated that someone would write to their own body.
Yeah.
And I just felt Lucille's tendency towards celebration, as well as grieving, of course, in everything she did. And on the wall of the upstairs, right outside this closet, where there's a doll collection that we were told was Lucille's own collection of gorgeous dolls from, like a lot of African dolls, Black dolls, dolls from different cultures, just dressed in beautiful fabrics, and they're kept in a closet so they won't fade on shelves. But right outside that closet, there is a map on the wall. I believe Sydney, her daughter, made the map, and the map is of their neighborhood, the neighborhood we're standing in at that moment in the house. And the map is fantastic because it's so detailed. It has little tiny things about who lived in what house. And
I love
this
that.
is the field where we picked something. And I mean, you just want this map on the cover of a Lucille Clifton book because it's so instructive to where they were and who they related to in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
But, I have always thought of poems are like maps. They're maps of where we are on any given day. They're maps of our moods, of our hopes, of our fondest wishes.
Yeah.
So,
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I love Baltimore, but
I do
the
too.
only times I've been, I didn't know about Lucille Clifton. So now I need to go
Now
back.
you have to go back.
Because
Yeah.
you're like the second or third person that has gone there and told me like, oh, because one of my favorite bands, Beach House, lived in Baltimore. So that's where it's like these cities that are underrated. To me, it's like Detroit or Jackson, Mississippi. It's like, everybody praises Austin or Nashville or
No,
Charlotte.
there are so
but
many
Baltimore
cities
is
that are
awesome.
underrated. Yeah.
And so I need to go back, but I have to show you this because we talked about it earlier with Glenn Taylor in West Virginia
Yeah.
that I went to interview. And so speaking of luminosity, look at here are his lampshades
Wow.
that are,
With poems by Lucille. And that's so
then-
gorgeous. That's so incredible. That's fabulous.
so
Look at
like
that.
the luminosity,
Wow,
the tattoo.
he's like a hero of Lucille. She's a hero of his, and
Well, it reminds me, my songwriter friend Eliza, when I interviewed her, not for this podcast, but the first one, she said something really interesting about Mary Oliver, that it felt like she was writing into her body.
wow, yeah, that's
And,
beautiful.
and Lucille Clifton, obviously
Yeah.
with the tattoo that Glenn has, but just in general, she stays with you. She's
Oh,
etched into your
yes.
soul. And it doesn't matter what kind of background you come from. I mean, she can
Yeah.
she can do that to anybody. And speaking of celebrations or anthems or awakening to life, when Glennis was really struggling when she got her diagnosis and she remembered kind of like sitting around, just in despair. And Lucille was one of those poets
Yep.
that helped lift her up, and now Glennis is still going
I
despite
understand.
of the problems with the body. And then I think it was Ramika that said Lucille Clifton changed the way she felt she could write about women.
Yes, for sure.
So it's like,
And also, I think she gave people more confidence in a more blunt voice. So many people think of poetry as an embellished language and an ornate language with all these flourishes and stacks of adjectives.
yeah,
I've been very drawn to so many styles of poetry, so I don't want to speak against that.
Sure.
But being attached to a blunt voice really can give you a lot of strength because you just feel closer to your own way of thinking. I mean, it makes the thinking that you have on a nonstop basis feel closer to poetry. Like,
wow,
yeah,
that's a good way to put it.
yeah,
And it's true because we think that we are often told or given poetry that had, it's flowery language.
Yeah.
And then it's going to take you like up into your dreams and everything. But it's like, actually,
yeah,
there's a rootedness to that kind of direct poetry. And I always appreciate how with so few words,
yes. So few words.
someone can make such a gigantic impact because it's not about trying to sound the smartest or the most beautiful. That's not what poetry is about. And so she accomplishes that.
Oh, she does. And I like even to see her poems from a distance on a page because the spaciousness is given its own weight. And that was something that appealed to me from early on, just the space around the poem, that the poem, these words deserve to have this space. It was like framing a painting in the museum. This painting deserves to be held by a frame and presented and a mat. And, I love the way photographs and things are framed, just how they look. And that spaciousness, which I think poetry honors most of all the genres, is a big part of it. And certainly Lucille calls it up. So I feel as if she's with us always, too. She has this enduring voice. I just love that.
Think about that.
Yeah.
Lucille, for me, in just the last year, Norfolk, Virginia, San Antonio, Texas, Greenville, South Carolina, Morgantown, West Virginia. She's just everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's so fun to make the connection through Lucille and all of these different places, because it makes it feel like everywhere is home.
Yeah.
Because you can find people that you can talk about.
Wow, no kidding.
I mean, it's amazing.
People should have these, maybe they do have them, these fan clubs, like for different writers. Maybe they have them. Like I remember when I was a teenager and kids were having these kind of Teen Beat fan clubs for different groups. Yeah, we should do that for the writers. That would be how people could find their friends, all the Lucille Clifton fans.
Yeah, and then you could make like
country.
a map of all the places that those clubs exist.
Yeah, they're everywhere.
And so when you visit, you can go hang out with your Lucille friends or whoever. That would be so cool.
Well, I'll never forget when I went to a library in Karachi, Pakistan. In the early 80s, the librarian said, a poet named William Stafford was here before you. And then I remembered, although I hadn't been thinking of it up till that moment. Oh, yes, I heard he had been to Pakistan, but I didn't know what he did there or where he went exactly. And this person said, the librarian said, we really liked him. Are all American poets like him? So humble? And I thought, that is such a beautiful quote. And I said, no, I think we're all different. Yeah. But there are many humble ones. And, we carried on. But I was able to read William Stafford with double the gusto there because they were all fans of William Stafford.
That is amazing.
It was great.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, they liked him.
But it's true. It's cool to feel like you're following in someone's existence, like that. When you occupy the same space. That's why I love going to Lemuria bookstore in Jackson, Eudora Welty's bookstore. Yeah. There's something so powerful.
Well, and I feel that even at a library table in a library. Yeah. Because other people have sat in that spot before you and been quiet and read. And, I think this could be the power. People who forgot about how great it is to sit in a library are detecting with these silent reading clubs that are springing up. Yeah. Yeah. Have you been hearing about those in the coffee shops?
Which is awesome.
Public spaces. Someone just told me they went to one at the Botanical Garden. I think it's fantastic.
Well, and this reminded me, it gives me chills just thinking about sitting in a spot that someone sat in and you didn't even know it, but it's almost like it doesn't even matter, right? Because you feel it, the history and the weight. But it reminds me of at a library in Vancouver, Patrick DeWitt, one of my favorite novelists, taught himself how to write. Because he got rid of his television. He wouldn't have a phone, nothing. He would just read and read and read and then learned how to write. And, now he's written so many. The Librarianist is his latest novel. Wow. And you would love it because it's about a retired librarian. And so it's reflections on his life as a librarian. And then there's this story that comes back around full circle when he's working in a nursing home in his retirement. But the point is, to think that like Patrick did that all those years ago, and now people are sitting in that same library, and who knows what they're discovering about the world and themselves. It's like so cool to think about.
That's so beautiful. Matt, you have to give me your reading list of all these people because I love how you keep mentioning things I need to know about. This is great.
I love sharing. I think like this is why Books on the Bed was good for everybody because you get to share, reminds me of things I get to share. And when you leave, you feel like you're going away with gifts of
beautiful
things that you're looking forward to. It's kind of like that. I learned about that Japanese word, and I unfortunately forget the word.
Yutori, the word of spaciousness.
Yeah.
Yeah. Greatest word I ever learned.
I know. I loved that. But it's
such a great word.
What are you making room for? And I think with books and stories, there's always possibility. Yeah. And so I get excited when you tell me about all these things that I haven't read or just connect on things that we have read that we've shared. But I always love telling people about books that I think they would love too, because writers only have so much time to read.
And we need direction sometimes. Yeah. And I think a lot of people get that direction from reading book reviews, which is fantastic. Sure. And by the way, you mentioned going to Baltimore. You'll have to look up Marion Winnick because she's one of my favorite writers. She's a book critic. She's read so many books and she reads a book a day. Practically. Wow. Literally, she can do
impressive. I'm too slow.
And then she writes about it. I mean, within a day, she can do that. I've seen it happen when we're on trips together. She's a miraculous reader and thinker about books, but also she's a terrific writer herself.
We're going to have to write notes
to each other.
And maybe I'll give you my address. You can send me letters.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Matt.
But what do you got for number 4?
Okay, number 4 is my father's book, his last book, Does the Land Remember Me? A Memoir of Palestine. And it's by Aziz Shihab with a foreword by Persis Karim of California. Of course, I love this book because it's his voice. And it's a very personal book. It's a memoir about Palestine. And he left there when he was in his early 20s, hoping always to go back and live there. I love the book because it has photographs of him that were so dear to me. Like, here's good. One of him reading news for the BBC.
How cool.
He was very articulate person. He was a journalist primarily, but he wrote a few books on the side. And this book came out 3 months before he died. And he was so happy that the 3 book parties that he was able to attend before he was too ill were sellouts. All the books sold out. And he hadn't even had the one in Dallas yet, where he was living at the time.
Oh my gosh.
So in 3 different cities, Austin, San Antonio, and I think it was Arlington, Texas, the bookstores sold out.
Not surprised.
So he was very proud of that. I'm touched by this book because it's his honest meditation on Palestine, on exile, on people's lives, stories. And as we all can tell, things are still profoundly troubled, if not 10 times more troubled right now. I have many days when I'm glad that he's not around to see what's going on in Gaza. His family was not in Gaza. They were from Jerusalem and the West Bank, where they ended up going after their house was taken from them in 1948. So this book, it kind of compresses his story into, he's visiting his mother, who lived to be 106, and he's also dealing with a land struggle within his own family. So he kind of makes a microcosm of the bigger struggle over land. And you know, it's not just him speaking only to Palestinian Arabs. He also has, you know, very positive engagements with Jewish people as well in the book. And he was pleased that some of the reviews pointed that out, that this was a person who obviously believed in connection in a larger way, not just sticking with your own tribe always. Yeah. And I see him as having been a wise man. He always greeted everyone as, hello, my friend.
I know.
And when we were kids, that used to bother us because we said, Dad, you don't even know him. And he would say, but I'll know him sooner if I call him my friend. He was charming. He was a person my friends to this day remember fondly. So having his book near me and continuing to recommend it has meant a lot to me. It came out from Syracuse University Press, and at the time they had a series of Middle East related books. I don't know if they're still emphasizing that, but he was very pleased with the books they were publishing. And it has a beautiful painting on the cover by our friend Selwa Arnous, a Palestinian who lives in Chicago now. We love her. We love her work. And so Does the Land Remember Me? A Memoir of Palestine is a book I keep near.
I've recommended this book to quite a few people.
Oh my gosh.
And especially recently.
You. Thank you so much.
You know, I didn't, when I first heard of your work, I didn't know about your father. But once you read your work and know about your life,
Thanks.
You know how much your father is in you and in all you do and the way you see the world. And it reminds me of that one of my favorite novelists is James McBride. And
I love him.
The Good Lord Bird.
Oh, yeah. It's so great.
Maybe my favorite novel. I mean, I could read that once every 6 months and not get bored.
He's incredible. Yeah.
But, and I love that Ethan Hawke plays John Brown in the TV show. Like, it's so good. But, cause he appreciates writing, you know, and poetry. So
he does. He's a good writer too, Ethan Hawke.
Oh, I know. He's great.
Yeah, I've given his novels away to people.
Yeah. So, but I think this is such an important book. Your father is such a beautiful person.
Thank
I
you.
wish I would have been able to meet him.
Oh, he would have loved to meet you, Matt. You're like his dream person.
But it's like this, it reminds me of this moment in The Good Lord Bird where, John Brown's sitting with Frederick Douglass and there's an antagonistic white woman, like one of Frederick Douglass' other women that's not his wife, that's at the dinner table, and she's just like shaming John Brown for his religious beliefs, and he kind of gets quiet and he talks about how we always reduce ourselves to our smallest selves.
Yes.
I'm from Maryland. I'm from New York, right? Whatever it might be. And I feel like your father is an example of the good that can come from
He wanted to do the opposite of that.
Right.
He wanted to pass through the horizon and see his friends who were there too, be with his friends he hadn't met yet. He always had that openness to people. I mean, he would make a friend on an airplane, and before I knew it, we were having a dramatic saga in Egypt, delivering something. This would probably sound dangerous to people. Yeah. Delivering something that friend needed to have delivered to someone in Egypt, and we're traipsing all over to find these people. Well, I mean, this happened frequently with my father.
And I love those stories. And I just feel like that's why, I don't know, there's a warmness about you that I knew we'd connect, and I didn't fear coming here. I didn't think you'd look down on me or what. There's certain writers that you just know you're going to be friends with. You just haven't met them yet. But there was a moment that happened yesterday on the trail at the Balcones Wildlife Refuge outside of Austin. And I was walking around, and because I wanted to see the warblers. They have the yellow warblers there. And
it's fantastic, right?
Oh my gosh, it was such a needed excursion. But toward the end, I met this couple, and I had just been kind of staring out at the hills and the trees, and on the other side, they were doing this gigantic, ugly development. And so they were looking at the green as well. We were turned away from what was ugly to what was beautiful. And like, oh man, it's kind of a bummer they did that on the other side. But then we just started talking, and Brad, the guy, and Lori, his girlfriend, they gave me all these recommendations in West Texas and Central Texas of these beautiful places to go, because I haven't spent much time here. And then I was telling them about where I live in North Carolina, and on we go. And I thought I was going to leave much earlier than I did, and it was like 45 minutes later, we exchanged phone numbers, and he and Lori are going to come visit me in North Carolina so that they can explore my mountains. And then when I come back to Texas eventually to go to West Texas, he's going to give me all the spots, and he might even join me on an excursion out there. And I was like, your father would love that. Right?
That's totally my father's. That's how he lived.
It was so, and the thing is, I know that I believe Brad and Lori. I believe that they're going to visit.
And don't you think, Matt, because you're a book lover and a story lover and a poem lover and all these connective things, don't you believe that makes your life as a human on the ground, running into people on a trail, say, it's more exquisite because you're open to it. You don't have an ingrained wall against, well, those are strangers.
Oh, no.
I'm not going to talk to them.
Everybody could be a friend.
Yeah, everyone could be a friend.
And my motto is, you can never have enough friends. And it doesn't mean they're all going to be best friends. I mean, my best friends are still from elementary school.
Right.
But even if they come to North Carolina and then I never see them again, even if they don't come for some reason, how special that you got that. I just don't think you can have enough friends, and friendship can take all kinds of forms. And, even while we were talking, this woman with her 2 kids on the trail overheard us, and she's from Tennessee and loves Western North Carolina. She went to UNC Chapel Hill. And so Brad and Lori walk off, and now me and this other woman are hanging out talking, and she really wants to get back to North Carolina and that part of the world. And so it was just so beautiful that I ended, in the whole trail, I talked to nobody, but I never say never about people, kind of like with poetry, you go where it's invited. I make friends with people that open the door, and you can tell when people want to talk and connect. And why would you turn that down if you don't really slow down, be there? So anyway,
I love it. Well, I love you are so book. Right, knowing that you and my father have that same spirit.
Yeah, and you too. I mean,
thanks.
Yeah. So
thank you so much for saying that.
Yeah.
Well, I do feel, this takes me to my next book, that Mossab Abu Toha is a poet out of Gaza whom my father was dreaming of that someone like this could come around. I feel almost as if he's a descendant of my father. Of course, they never met. He was alive when my father was alive too, but they're so connected in their sensibilities. And the book, which has become, I think, something of a sensation in terms of how many people have read and talk about this book, plus his newest book, Things You May Find Hidden in My Ear by Mossab Abu Toha, came from City Lights Press. I was in touch with him years before this book came out because as the founder of the Dr. Edward Said Libraries in English in Gaza, he wrote to a lot of American writers and asked us if we could send him books. So there was some channel through a diplomat he knew. She may have been a friendly Jewish diplomat in Jerusalem. I can't remember exactly who that woman was. We were to send books to her and she would deliver them to him. So, you know, he asked me to spread the word. Everybody spread the word. Yeah. He ended up having, I think, 4 libraries through Gaza.
That's incredible.
And they became not only libraries filled with books in English, because as we've probably noticed on Instagram, people in Gaza learn English and people in Palestine have often learned English since the British Mandate, etc. So Gaza was lucky to have these places, and they also became places where kids would go and do homework after school, and they would have programs. So I feel as if Mossab, in this grievous, terrible time of pain and rubble, you know, their world has been destroyed. In his book, we have pictures like strawberries on a plate. Strawberries are one of the biggest crops of Gaza. Mm-hmm. Through it all, the strawberries have never stopped growing. So here's a poem from Mossab. We love what we have. We love what we have, no matter how little, because if we don't, everything will be gone. If we don't, we will no longer exist, since there will be nothing here for us. What's here is something that we are still building. It's something we cannot yet see because we are part of it. Someday soon, this building will stand on its own, while we will be the trees that protect it from the fierce wind, the trees that will give shade to children sleeping inside or playing on swings. On the back of this book I wrote, I was asked to do a comment since I'd been in touch with him for years. Mm-hmm. And I wrote, Mossab Abu Toha is an astonishingly gifted young poet from Gaza, almost a seer with his eloquent, lyrical vernacular. His poems break my heart and awaken it at the same time. I feel I have been waiting for his work all my life.
There it is.
Yeah, and here it is. And I'm so happy that places like the New York Times and the New Yorker magazine have given him prominent spots in their pages. Yeah. And I'm not going to argue with those journals for other parts of their coverage, which I know many people want to do, because they've also given space to Mossab. And his second book, Forest of Noise, is just out from Knopf. So thanks to these publishers who have taken on a Palestinian in exile. He was abducted by the Israeli forces and beaten, and he is now in safer places out of Gaza, but he is constantly concerned about the rest of his family because they're still there. Yeah. And everyone should read him, and you should share his poems with your students. And I love that he writes poems that students really of almost any age could understand, you know, from 5th grade on up. Yeah. His poems are very welcoming to people who don't write. Many people have told me, you know, I don't have any poetry books except this one I totally embrace. And
Isn't that incredible?
Whoa, Mossab, this is great. You have crossed all these borders into libraries where people don't even read other poems.
I mean, what do you think makes that so true?
Well, I think it's partly the fact that he has great humanity. He has always been able to see, I mean, he did have an injured ear from an earlier bombing in Gaza, because these horrible things have been going on for years. I once went to a lecture in San Antonio by a scholar, Dr. Luke Peterson, who said, the title of his lecture was Gaza is Not Far Away. And he'd been doing all this research and study among people of Gaza, and he was just profound in his way of making the people of Gaza seem just like you or I, where they're just human beings. They have the same dreams, the same wishes. And I wrote a poem dedicated to him after I heard his lecture. But Mossab has that humanity that people relate to. He's not a bitter person, although people's comments on Facebook, he is a very diligent poster on Facebook, can really annoy him lately because they're so thoughtless and heartless. Yeah. As if you can take a day in which 187 innocent children are killed and say something like, well, they deserved it. I mean, Mossab is ready to fight. You say something like that and he will fight you. And he does it, though, with knowledge, with understanding, with humanity. He's a father. He has kids. And that feeling of his beauty. I mean, he's also a beautiful speaker and a beautiful person. And I think he just has found a way to be connected to a lot of audiences. And I'm so grateful for him. Yeah. And I also know that he believes in teaching and encouraging younger writers. And he has been very involved with the work of the group out of Gaza called We Are Not Numbers. And that is a group that encourages all people to tell their stories.
Well, and I would say that is a thread here.
Yeah.
Of encouragers.
Yeah.
People
they're all encouragers
who want others' voices to be those voices that can reach somebody.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be special or like designated a poet, to do it. So I really love that. And this is a good reminder to get that book on our shelves at City Lights in Silver where I work.
It is a book that everybody should have. And I feel that, we owe it to the people of Gaza since we have been responsible for paying for the bombs that have killed them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like our job to know the people we've killed as a nation. And to see so much profanity in the news arising, like just to speak up, to be pro-Palestinian is suddenly a crime, which is outrageous. I mean, it's like the most active racism I've seen, for a long time. There's a lot of racism in the world, but it's shameful. And the next book that I have is a charming book.
I was really excited based on the cover and the title.
Yes.
And this makes a lot of sense for you, it feels like.
So this book, I just am noticing it was printed and bound in the Czech Republic.
Wow.
It was published in the UK in 2022. This is a book I bought knowing nothing about it or the author, but I adored the title and the cover. So I don't quite believe the quote that, you never judge a book by its cover, because I think a lot of us are drawn to a book by its cover. And I definitely stopped to look at this book because the cover was so appealing. Yeah. So the book, The Year I Stopped to Notice, by Miranda Keeling. And she lives in the UK, but it seems as if she's done a lot of things for the BBC, Theatre Royal Haymarket. She's also an actor. But what I love about this book, because I've always told kids, you don't write down everything that happens to you in a day. You just pick out a few things you'd like to remember.
Yeah.
So here's an example of a page just opened at random here. On a quiet street, a mattress rests like an old boat washed ashore. Its cargo, a broken radiator, some tangled fairy lights, and 5 chips.
How great is that?
And another little section. I mean, these are little increments. These are like notice little things that would be in a notebook. So they're just entries into a notebook in a large font. By the way, readers, if you are tired of tiny fonts books, get this book.
That's so good.
Because this has a very large font on many of the pages. Here's one. Bus announcer, James Lane. Woman on the bus, to no one in particular. James Lane. That's nice. Announcer, Sir Alfred Hitchcock Hotel. Woman, well, that's splendid. So Miranda Keeling is going about in her life and writing down little things she sees and hears. And that's how poets are born. You know, I tell kids, write 3 things down a day. Don't look at them. And then at the end of a month, look back at your 90 things and start noticing what you notice.
Oh.
Because maybe you'll have a lot of bird entries, or maybe you notice cars, or maybe you notice cats, or maybe you're always quoting what people say. And here's one more. A man taking a break from some sort of conference stands looking at the rain. A name tag on his suit jacket reads, unknown. I love that.
Oh, that's so
I think
good.
that's so funny. So this is a book you want to have, you want to give to your friends, get extras.
But it feels like,
so
I mean, if we're to, like based on the books you shared, and one thing I love about you is you help me notice things. I'm not a poet. I don't write poetry about the things I've noticed, but I love to notice. I love to slow down. I love to walk. I walk everywhere. This morning, I left early. Talk about you, Tori.
Yeah.
Leaving space, like getting
Always
there,
leave
getting
the
there
space.
early so you don't rush. I was just
Always
walking around the river, walking around the neighborhood. That's how I saw the skulls, and like a million things. But it's just, 20 minutes even can change how you engage with the world. It brings you closer to it.
That is my favorite thing to do every day, is to go out and walk. I pick up trash in downtown, and I love the feeling of just going out without an agenda, not even knowing which direction I'm going to walk today, but having my tongs, having my bag, picking up trash, and eavesdropping and viewing and soaking in the atmosphere.
Oh my gosh, I love this.
So Miranda Keeling, it says she has a popular Twitter account. So I don't use Twitter, but those of you who have Twitter accounts, check her out.
Oh, I love that.
So those are my books on the bed that I would recommend to anyone who's overnighting or overlifing in my home. Come stay here. But always, I had a few extras here.
Yeah,
I needed to
let's
mention.
give attention to them.
So quick attention. I was just kind of torn because I like to have books that are my old favorites near me also. So I have recommended the book Braided Creek, A Conversation in Poetry by Ted Kooser and Jim Harrison so much that I was asked to write the introduction to the second edition of this book, which was 20 years later. So that's exciting. I can't even find my own copy of the second edition, or the second whatever it was. But I love this book. From the first moment I read it, I started taking it to all my classes because it also is very small increments. I think of it as tiny American haiku. And by the way, people in Japan say counting the syllables in haiku writing was only for people who are writing in Japanese. I just throw that out there for all the American teachers who have always insisted their kids do the 5-7-5. In Japan, they say, no, that's only if you're writing Japanese.
Wow.
You can just do 3 lines and maybe have a twist.
No one ever told me that.
I know. Go to Japan, they'll all tell you that.
Look at that.
So I learned that working there with teachers. But there's no syllable counting in this book, but it is such a charming book. And I find that it really helps kids to think, or anyone, to think in terms of how much poetry is in their immediate surrounding every single day.
I love
You can't get away from it. And I do know Ted Kooser. I love him. I never met Jim Harrison, but I love his writing.
What a trip. He seems like
just amazing. And so this book, these were letters. These were little poems they sent back and forth to each other.
I love correspondence.
I do too.
I hate that
Correspondence.
we don't do it enough.
It's everything.
Let me just tell you real quick though, because you'll love this. I have 2 bookstore customers at City Lights. I only met them once because they live far enough away that we might miss each other depending on when I'm working and not. But they came in, we started talking. They lived in Ann Arbor for a long time. I went to university in Ann Arbor. And so they told me, oh yeah, we're going back up in a few weeks. Well, a week later, guess what I get in the mail at City Lights? A postcard, handwritten letter from this couple from one of my favorite bookstores ever, the Dawn Treader in Ann Arbor.
Oh, how wonderful.
And then 1 week after that, they sent me another postcard
I love
to
them.
update me on what they were doing in Ann Arbor. And I'm like,
That is so sweet.
right. It's just,
Yeah.
but that's why I love anything correspondence, because it's
I
so
agree.
intimate and it's so personal and it's intentional. And yeah,
It's so wonderful. Well, do you have my book, The Turtle of Michigan? It's set in
I
Ann
do.
Arbor.
Yes, I
Okay,
do.
good.
Oh, come on.
Yeah.
I actually have, well, the other one for you to sign.
Turtle of Michigan is set there. So I just finished this book yesterday. It's a first book by I think she says she's 57-year-old writer, Lauren K. Wattell, Book of Potions. And potion is P-O from poetry and shuns from fictions. So these are written as small prose poem, little entries that are amazing. And this book was selected by Ilya Kaminsky as a Catherine A. Morton winner. And it is stunning. I read it in 2 days. It came out from Saraband Books in Kentucky.
That's who I'm interviewing, the director of Saraband.
Oh, you're
In
kidding.
April. Yeah, she's the one that does the French translation.
Well, I had to
gotta tell
mention
her.
this book because I'm in love with it. Book of Potions is, for me, it was like, thank you for cleansing my spirit.
Yeah.
Thank you for making me laugh out loud, for being a voice I have never heard before. Except I have met Lauren a couple of times, and I'm excited to see her again when she comes down here for a book signing. But I think this book is going to make a lot of friends. So Book of Potions, and I think we need a lot of potions these days.
Yeah.
There's so much honesty in this book, and there's a knife on the cover, and you'll understand why there's a knife when you read the book, because it's kind of knifing through anything you consider BS in your
Yeah.
life. It's knifing through to a clean voice, a clear text, and honest disclosure.
Well, I'm going to make friends with it. Do you think I could buy this from a bookstore around here? Do you think they have it?
I know they will have it soon because
Okay.
she's coming, but I don't know if they have it yet. And she lives out in Decatur, Georgia, outside of Atlanta.
Yeah.
I think it's Decatur.
Not too
Yeah.
far from-
No, like in Georgia.
From where I live.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll go visit her.
Yeah, go visit her. You
Book's
should
on the
go
bed. Let's
visit
do
her.
it.
I think she would be good.
Yeah.
Yes, she would definitely be good. And so 2 books that are on my bedside to be read next are, and this one gives me a chill because it starts in a bookstore, Literarity in El Paso, Texas. I walk into Literarity, an independently owned bookstore, about a month ago now. And I have a great connection with the owner. I've never met him before. We start talking about favorite books, favorite authors. And then I pick up a few books that I'm going to buy. And then I said, but if I were buying one book out of the whole bookstore that you personally love today, what is one you would tell me about? I'm curious if I have it already. And he said, Retablos, Stories from a Life Lived Along the Border by Octavio Solis. So I said, okay, put it on my pile. I want to buy it. So I haven't read it yet, but it's coming. But get this, Matt. So someone I know locally here in San Antonio just sends me an announcement of a premiere of a play that's opening at my alma mater, Trinity University. The play is opening in 2 weeks. It's called In the Clearing. Who is the author of the play?
Oh my God.
Octavio Solis. So I said, oh my God.
I love
that
this.
is the book.
That's it.
That is the book that I just bought. So I got my tickets to the play.
That's so cool.
So I'm going to start this book before I go to the play. So I have a sense of his voice already.
That
Very
is
exciting.
so awesome.
And then yesterday, in the mail, I received Daughters of Palestine, a memoir in 5 generations by Layla K. King, who is a Palestinian-American Episcopal priest in West Texas.
Are you kidding me?
No.
Are you?
And I am extremely excited to read this book. So I've not heard of Layla King before now. I'm thinking to myself, where have we been all each other's lives? Yeah. What town is she in? I want to find out about her family. I can't wait to drive over there and meet her. And I'm just thrilled to have this book. So to me, to have books by the bed always that are books still to be read Can't wait to read them. That is like the sizzle of being a lifetime reader, is that new books start stacking up. And I love how we curate them. Like, I do have a couple of older books that I've had around for a while that I was planning to read next. But with these two books coming into my life, now I go, no, I have to read these right now. So, and now I have the two you gave me.
Yeah.
So there's this sense of, it's like it's our second life, right? Being a reader, it's our alternative life. I mean, you walk down the street, no one can say what you're reading exactly, but you know what you're reading. And it's as if part of you is in that story right now. And yeah, it's thrilling. It's delicious.
It is.
It's so delicious.